It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon with you.
Hey guys, my name is Matt Streich, and I'm a co-founder of Baked and Turp Basil, and we are a group that puts on different experiential events around the country as well as international markets. And Turp Basil has been going on for the past 3 years. This December we'll put on our fourth event, and it's getting bigger every year. We do other events in California for major trade shows as either a pre-party or an after-party to get a lot of brand engagement and content and such. And yeah, that's in a nutshell. We'll get into much more, but pass it over to my partner, Steve here.
All the same things Matt said. I'm Steve Liscano, co-founder of Baked and Turp Basil, and really happy to be here. Cannadelic was one of the early events that I checked out in my career, and definitely been a great event to continue to visit every year. And I think, like Bobby said, the tourism market, cannabis tourism market, is just going to keep exploding, and Miami's the spot.
Hi, I'm Luna Bliss from Canna Bliss Babes, and we produce events and partner with conventions to bring you cool activations all around the world. I've been in the industry my whole life. My dad grew. I just naturally have this business came about. We realized that we could get plant sponsorships instead of business sponsorships, which is business sponsorships. So created this whole business out of cool things that we wanted to do to bring the community together and show a space that women can have a safe space to practice plant medicines and have a community of their own. And we also integrate with, all the species, but we don't allow just, it's our things started out as just women, and as you see, we've grown into these conferences where we can bring you cool activations. So we appreciate you growing with us.
Hello, everyone. Sorry about that. I'm Bailey. I'm from the East Coast. I consider myself a cannabis globalist. I feel as though cannabis is something that's helped so many people that I want to bring it worldwide and have fun events while I do it. I've recently decided only to go to warm places. So on my travels, yeah, this has been amazing. Florida's absolutely beautiful. Can't wait until this state goes recreational so that everyone can enjoy this plant. And I bring events to people in my area, such as a women's event called Coffee and Cannabis. And we do an event called Hexpo, or the Halloween Cannabis Expo, which is in Seekonk, Massachusetts, in October of 2025, if you guys are in the area. But yeah, just great to be here. Just so grateful. And all of you guys are so awesome. Like, these are all my friends up here, and my husband, Bobby. Here you go.
I love you so much. We are blessed. I get to do this every day with my wife. We're full-time event planners, and this is everything to us. This is our entire life. A little bit about me. I've been in the cannabis space for the last 17 years. I've traveled the world during cannabis events. I'm an activist, a journalist, an author. I truly love weed, guys. It's my entire life. I've dedicated every waking moment to it. So I'll be 37 in a couple months. So almost 17 years since I was 20. I don't know anything else but traveling for weed and smoking. So but that brings me to my next topic. I just want to get in a little bit about the history, right? Cannabis tourism. Not a lot of people know that this kind of started in Holland and in Amsterdam, and that was one of the first places, you could actually go in the early 2000s and the 90s, right? You could stop at the Gray area or, any of these famous coffee shops in Holland, and you could buy hash, you could buy cannabis, you could chill there and consume while you could get a coffee or, a donut and kick it. And Holland's scene became one of the most famous in the world. Shout out to High Times. Those guys kind of paved the way for what we're doing now in the United States. For me, that was really where it started, and I want to just kind of get into asking you guys, where did it all start for you? Where was your first experience or event or place you traveled where you needed to find weed? And, how did cannabis tourism spark for you?
Well, I guess there would be a counterpoint about it starting in Holland when you talk about coming from Jamaica. One could argue that really and truly cannabis consumption and really the messaging around the significant role it can play in wellness, spiritual, health-wise, etc., was really originated in Jamaica. I mean, I feel strongly about that. I think those messages, you know, we listen to it, we love the music, but do we actually go one step further and give the credit where it's due to sort of say, you know, this really permeated and was introduced by people who took a massive risk at the time. You know, Peter Tosh, Bob Marley flying around the world and performing. It was not a time when you had a right to a visa or a right to perform and these sorts of things. They took really consequential risks in doing that. So while I salute what happened in Holland, I also think it's incredibly important that as we advance this industry, and it's still in its very early stages, we really give credit and recognize some of the real pioneers who stepped out at a time when just their messaging, just their way of living and sharing did a lot to pave the way for how we have evolved in this marketplace.
Yeah, that's great. All great points for sure. My I guess introduction. I guess I'm trying to pinpoint exactly like one instance, but I think there's really a few. You know, I've been consuming cannabis since I'm about 14, 15 years old. It was the first time I really tried it. Smoked out of a soda can with a buddy of mine in a backfield in a neighborhood, and you know. But the first time I ever really traveled for cannabis, I'm trying to either pinpoint it. It was either when I went to the Denver Cannabis Cup in 2014, right when cannabis legalized in Colorado, and that was a great show. It was really mind-blowing to see, you know, everything there. That was the first time I got introduced to Cam, their flower, because they were from Colorado at that time. And I just remember seeing that flower and saying, like, this is definitely the best weed here. And sure enough, they ended up winning that year. So, but, you know, there's other instances as well. I took a cruise in 2007 with a couple of buddies of mine, and we went to Honduras, we went to Belize, we went to Mexico, and an island in the Bahamas. And when we were in Belize, we actually were looking around, seeing if we could find some weed. And we ended up finding a couple Rastas there that were walking around, and we asked them if they can get weed, and they took us back to this one of their houses and sold us some of the dirtiest weed I've ever smoked in my life. But nonetheless, it got us high, and that was actually my first introduction to Fronto leaf. They pulled out this giant dried leaf and ripped off what they needed and rolled up with it. And so, you know, those couple of experiences really shaped like how I viewed cannabis from a global perspective and understood that this plant is everywhere and, you know, a part of so many people's lives.
Hey, yeah, so growing up in Miami, I was definitely early cannabis entrepreneur like many people around me, but I didn't really partake until I got into adulthood. I always looked at it as a business. I was a really strangely serious kid about business. But, you know, as I got older and I, you know, worked in the corporate world, and I worked in the event space for quite a while in Miami, I ended up going on a vacation to Denver, and I ended up stumbling into an expo, like getting an invite to an expo called Indo Expo. And I had no idea that there was this side of the industry, and it really opened my eyes. I walked around that place, and I literally left there and I said, this is a real industry and there's real opportunities, and I'm gonna go home and figure it out. And I came back to Miami. I went to an event for the trade organization C-Lab, and I just started like stalking different companies that had positions, just trying to get like a corporate role. I was in healthcare data analytics before that, so I was like, I got to be in the weed space, but you know, let me use my strengths. And eventually, I literally cornered a CEO and ended up getting a job. You know, really cornering him at a conference, and just said, I've applied, I've interviewed, hire me. And he just literally made the decision. He's like, all right, you're hired. And that's been it since then. That was only about.
First job?
That was my first job in the cannabis
job.
industry. Yeah. My first job was slinging nicks. But yeah, so that was only about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and it's just been ever since. It's taken over my life, so I'm gonna be like this guy soon when I grow up. I'm ready to dedicate it all to it, and I think we all should.
Yeah, so I have had a lot of different international experiences with needing a medicine because as I had got introduced to cannabis very young, I use it for a lot of different things in my life, and I didn't feel comfortable going anywhere abroad without anything, but everybody had scared me about traveling with your own things because, it's not legal in this country or a lot of others at this time. So being able to hear about, places in Europe where it was a free plant, it was allowed to be in stores and coffee shops and shared, and not demonized, was something that I was like, how do we be a part of this? Like, how do we get this to America? And it took many, many moons later. And we're still not where we want to be, but we have progression here. And being able to travel internationally and not worry about taking your meds because we have formed this network of amazing growers and entrepreneurs with different branding around the world that now I didn't grow up in a time with apps that you could order, cannabis to your door like we have now. But now we can travel internationally and have this group and know where to go to these coffee shops that aren't advertised anywhere. It's all word of mouth. Like some of them have social medias now, but back in the day, they didn't have any of that. So getting the word out about where you can go and safely consume your medicine is really important. And we need to continue to break those barriers all around the world.
Absolutely. The question was our first experience with weed in the industry.
Like
Okay.
international cannabis.
Yeah. As you were saying, Amsterdam, that was like big for me. I was like, wow, you could just go into a coffee shop and enjoy cannabis and be free. And for me, I smoked very young. I had 3 older brothers and a lot of male cousins who smoked a ton of cannabis. And I'd be like, what's that smell? Like that skunk smell. I just want to be cool and just like want to have a good time. So I smoked a lot, and it was natural for me to just be in the industry and always kind of. I started out middlemaning a lot, so I wouldn't have to buy a ton of product, but I would be able to, offload it to my family really quick and like make a lot of money and smoke for free or something. So that, yeah, like I think we all come from the legacy market. That's just where things initiated and continued. We owe a lot to the legacy market. We wouldn't have the genetics that we have today if people didn't continue to grow when they weren't supposed to and risk their freedoms. And for me, I'm so lucky I never got arrested because there's been so many times I've traveled with weed and had a lot of stuff on me that maybe I should have gotten in trouble. But it's great to see that cannabis tourism is taking such a curve, and everybody can come out here and enjoy things, and this place allows it, and we're able to enjoy cannabis together, so I'm so grateful for that.
Well said. Yeah, so that kind of brings me to my next point, the do's and don'ts, man. There's a lot of nuances to this. In every place you go, the laws are different. From state to state here in the United States, laws are different. Just traveling in general is stressful, yet alone traveling with weed to other states or other countries where you really don't know anybody. That can be incredibly difficult to do, and sometimes it doesn't end up in the best scenarios for you. So I always say tread carefully, right? Learn your laws of where you're going, first of all. If you're traveling abroad, do your research, get to know the local places, and you really gotta pay attention to like what's going on around you at all times. I feel like a lot of us have been doing this for a while, or we go to a lot of these conventions, so we get a little too comfortable. We're still not there yet. In a lot of places you go, you can get in serious trouble. Miami has only decriminalized 20 grams. So if you're into concentrates, you are not legal here. You cannot carry concentrates with you in Miami. Hopefully once it goes recreational here, that will change things dramatically. But let's get in a little bit about, the do's and don'ts. How do you guys travel with weed? Do you travel with weed? Do you wait to go where you're going and find it? How does it work? How do you do it?
I'm always quietly amused at some of the stories that I hear from some of my colleagues in the industry, who travel with this in their suitcase and that in their suitcase. And, just, just the realities of life, and particularly in the United States, is that, those stories are just not even within the realm of possibility for someone like myself. It would just be plain stupid to do something like that or to try something like that.
Sure.
And, it's one of those sort of, this is why I always say it's important to have different points of view about things, because, some of these things as considerations just sail over other people's heads, because, it's like, oh crap, I got pulled over and I forgot I had the weed in the trunk. Well, that's not going to happen with someone like myself, because you're like, listen, I have nothing in the trunk, but I better check to make sure I have nothing in the trunk, let alone weed. So it's a long answer, but I just say that to say that I think in everything that we do, questions like that allow us an opportunity to sometimes think through things that we would otherwise miss. And is in the recognition of it that sometimes we can take a stance to sort of say, you know what, maybe this doesn't impact me, but maybe it's not right. And maybe there's something I can do in that situation. Anyway, so I don't have an answer to that, because I would never do that, because it would be the end of the road sort of thing for me anyway.
If you want, just don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely get where you're coming from 100%. And I mean, I can't say that I don't travel with cannabis for sure, but I understand what comes with that. And I have actually been arrested for cannabis. I got pulled over. I used to travel everywhere with a Pelican case with my rig and torch and a couple grams of dabs in there and dab tool, like literally the whole setup. I just walk around with it like a briefcase. And I, got pulled over one time for a tail light out, or not even my tag light was not on. One of the light bulbs went out and I got pulled. And, they pulled me out of the car, searched and everything, and I ended up spending the night in jail. And that was not fun. I, since then have kind of readjusted how I maneuver, right? But I still tend to, I brought my Puffco with me today and a jar or two of rosin, but I understand that, there's risk with that, but, I love this plant. I love to smoke and consume, and I kind of like take the risk. That's kind of like what I've decided to do for myself. But I don't, I never suggest anybody do anything that they're not comfortable with doing. But one other thing I'll add is the time that I find I travel the most with it is when I'm traveling back from California.
So yeah, I think my main philosophy about it is that if you're going to travel with it, just be aware, like Bobby said, the research is so important, and be aware of what the consequences you might face. Coming back from California, not me, but a guy I know recently had way too much in their bag. And
I don't know who you're talking about.
He took that opportunity to really,
Stock up.
to really talk to the agents that were questioning him and challenge their perception of it.
Actually wasn't me.
No. Challenge their perception about, what they were doing. And the argument wins sometimes, and won that time. And literally nothing happened after about 20 minutes of impassioned preaching and reassuring the agents that, this is only going to turn into activism, and this person's not the person that you're looking for, not hurting anybody. And, so I look at it like that. Know what the consequences are going to be. Be prepared to face them. I'm a man with a dog, so, I'm not as worried about it. But if I had a family, I'd definitely not be taking any kind of chances. But if you do end up in that situation and it does go south, take the opportunity, please, to do what you can to spread the word, to show that you're not the threat, to talk about it afterwards, talk about your experience. The more we speak up to break that taboo and the ridiculous, stain that it has in people's psychology that just isn't, in touch with reality, we've got to kill that. And whatever we can do at any opportunity, like if you want to be an activist, I'm all for it. I'll bail you out.
I love that. I cannot confirm or deny that I've done anything here or abroad ever in my entire life. But other people have traveled with things, and I don't advocate for you, but I advocate for you doing what is necessary for your own medicine. I have since been able to build the resources to have connections all over the world that I do not have to do anything anymore, or ever.
Better strategy.
Yeah. And I suggest that route. If you need somebody that is safe, like, please reach out. We have, worldwide connections for a reason. We also have cannabis tourism for a reason. You can go and safely go to a resort that is allowed to have this on their country and their land, and be able to not have to be in the streets, asking for something from somebody that you smell something from that may or may not be nice, or may or not, lead into something more of a threat. Which you just don't need to place on yourself. So being able to travel now and create these events and create safe spaces for the community is really, I think, why we're all passionate about cannabis tourism.
I love that. Yeah, tools like Instagram are super useful when you're looking for cannabis. If you don't want to travel with it, you reach out to people in the area, see if anyone, is reputable or knows friends, mutual friends, things like that. If you're going to travel with glass pieces, make sure that you fully clean them because they can get you for stuff like that. I would only condone traveling with a small amount for your own personal use if, you really, really need it. I try to take tolerance breaks and try to travel without it, especially if I'm flying. If I'm driving, that's a different story. I'll bring, a little something.
Yeah, man, like I said, there's so many nuances to this, right? I always say if you're going to do it, vac seal that shit. I would put it in your check bag. Usually I don't put stuff in my carry-on. I've taken almost 30 plus flights across the United States over the last 9 or 10 years, and I brought cannabis or dabs with me to every single one of them. I have a specific way I do things every time. I've never actually had an issue, except one time I got a note in my bag. It just was a bunch of yada yada. We don't allow cannabis on flights, blah, blah, blah. So I took a little heated warning after that, but still I proceeded to do it. Again, just heed your own personal feelings about things moving forward with that type of stuff. And hopefully we all see, lesson regulations about that type of stuff, right? Because, traveling is so stressful. I would like to be able to smoke a little bit of weed or bring something on a plane and not worry about it. From legal to legal states, there's, you don't have to worry as much, I feel, because a lot of the airport securities nowadays they don't worry about that. They're not looking for that. They're looking for more things of safety concerns. So, shoot it.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, just one thing to add to that, also just be aware of where you are and where you're going and what the laws are in those places because, specific places like California and, just LA, specifically LAX, a couple years ago announced that they do not, really care about traveling with cannabis. And it's, I don't know all the specific language in it, but they did update that. So if you're flying out of LAX, they're not going to stop you with your cannabis, but you need to be aware of the laws where you're flying into. So just something to add to that, it just depends on where you're at, where you're going, and what the laws are in those places.
And, they put amnesty boxes there for a reason. If you don't feel comfortable, toss that shit in there, and you won't have a problem, guys. I wanted to segue back into our next topic, which is really back on the cannabis tourism destinations. I wanted to get into some of the U.S. hotspots and, global tourism destinations because there's so many. For me, I've spent a lot of time going to Colorado and California, and, that was where I laid my foundation work for my network here in the U.S. And some of the most impactful events I've gone to in my career were in Colorado and LA. And still to this day, if you haven't had the chance to visit either one of those states, I personally think you should check them out because they're amazing. There's a lot of original strains from both of those states that are beloved and, we now consider heirloom. Personally, for me, I'm from the Northeast. We spend a lot of time in Massachusetts and in Maine. Both of those states have amazing laws and tons of dispensaries and options for you. So Massachusetts is like Green Check. Maine is even another one. They have cannabis-friendly camping grounds. They have cannabis-friendly bed and breakfasts. Basically, it's like a free-for-all up there. If you have the balls to try to do it and open the business, you just try it in the town you're in. And some people have been massively successful there. And Maine is definitely a place that, if you're ever visiting the Northeast, I would recommend visiting specifically for the weed, the hash, and the food. What about you guys? What are some of your favorite U.S. hotspots?
Well, again, I'll refer back to Jamaica.
Yes, sir.
But
We're going to give you a whole point to talk about that one.
I think, when I think of cannabis tourism, I think one of the things that is important for anybody looking at that as a viable business opportunity is not just limiting it to sort of the resale of flower, but really enhancing that with services. People nowadays are really looking for more experiences, particularly with their travel that they go on. It's not just about the sand, the sea, the hotel, etc. It's about how can I immerse myself somehow in this destination, have something that I can have as a memory from it. And so, you look at things like even infusing it into massage, spa treatments. You look at, a cooking experience with using cannabis, etc. There are a lot of different ways. I mean, even with art, right? Which I think is phenomenal. But I think there's even going from showcasing art to immersive art, like a buds and brush type of experience. I think there are a lot of different ways in which, when we think about cannabis, we think about tourism. There's a real opportunity to open up our minds to find ways in which there might be, especially a service. I say that because, in the way the industry's evolved, there's been huge capex, which hasn't worked out for most people, right? And those of us who don't have gobs and gobs of capital to go into to take a gamble on something that has big capex, these are other ways that you can get involved in the industry that you love and for a plant that you really believe in, to give that customer an experience and a value-added business opportunity for yourself that goes beyond just the transaction of, buy 2 grams and pay this amount of money, et cetera. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's you hit on a lot of points that really touch on the core of what we do. We're all about experiences and leaving a lasting impression on people. So we've done different events like comedy shows where we book a major headlining comedian and rent out a comedy club that we convince to let it be cannabis friendly for the evening. We set up a pre-game room where we have a dab station, photo booths, all sorts of things. We work a lot with groups like Freedom Grow, so we'll have like Randy Lanier there signing books and getting donations for the cause, things like that. And then after everyone's nice and toasted, they enter the main room and watch the comedy show. And that just is something that leaves people with a memory that is more than just, oh yeah, I remember I went to this place and smoked a blunt. It's like much more than that. And, it's just one example. We've done infused dinners. We've done, larger scale events. But everything we do is very culture forward. We double down on culture and try to leave people with something that they can take with them for the rest of their lives. But my favorite, you said U.S. destinations? Miami for sure. I don't live in Miami. I live in a little bit north of here, but I mean, this is such an emerging market, and the culture has been so strong down here for years, and I just feel like not too many people know about it yet, that how strong the culture is here. I know New York is blowing up. I haven't had a chance to really experience the New York scene yet, but seen a lot of cool stuff. Seen some things I don't condone too, but
They're crazy.
yeah, no spray packs, man. If you're proud to smoke spray packs, I don't want to talk to you. Someone say, what is that? That's when people are taking low-grade cannabis and spraying botanical terpenes on it and are trying to sell it to people that are not knowledgeable on the plant. And then you end up with weed that tastes like a e-cig, and people that don't know any better think that that's what weed should taste like. And then they finally try real weed, and they're like, ew, what is this? So, but yeah, Miami is like super underrated and on the come up. I recommend anybody watching this that hasn't been to Miami and experienced it, come to Turp Basel in December, and you will see it'll be a mind-blowing experience. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I'd say my favorite U.S. hotspots. I mean, obviously, I love what's going on in our culture down here, but I'll say outside of here, honestly, going to California, I feel like it's very similar vibes to down here, but the people are quite a bit friendlier. So I've had great experiences in California, and literally from north to south, because I follow these shows. And so I've had times where I've left a convention in Santa Rosa and then ended up in a backyard doing sound therapy with a bunch of strangers and hanging out till 2 o'clock in the morning, smoking and stuff. And then I've been out to random bars in the middle of Palm Springs and playing pool with strangers that became friends. And, it's just everywhere I've been out there, I really like the vibe. So I'd say all over California I've had great cannabis tourism experiences, even if they weren't really like intended to be that. I've definitely found a welcoming community there.
So, being from Miami, I've kind of always known about the Miami culture. It just wasn't much of a culture. But being able to see it grow into what it is, this is the most up and coming hotspot. We're not even legal yet. Like, we're not even rec. People treat this like a rec state. And it is beautiful to see because I was here long before Miami even went med. We're super behind the times here. And now I believe that it's grown into a much more welcome culture, as where it was kind of demonized and like didn't want to be involved because it's such a bar culture for tourism here. They lure people with, all these different clubs and music and alcohol, and to not allow us to have our own thing that we want, like that's not causing danger to anyone, that's on the streets of any of these tourism places, is a little bit crazy. So Miami is really blowing up right now, and us being able to create this space for everybody to access medicine safely and legally is definitely important. But I grew up, I've grown up here, but I grew up going to Colorado, which when it turned rec was like a light switch. That was, I feel like, my original U.S. cannabis tourism culture. Like, I realized that people were going there and getting things because that was one of the only places you could access it easily. Walk into a store and just purchase. You didn't have to know a guy on the street that knew a guy down the road that, any of that kind of stuff. There wasn't an app that you could have it delivered at that time. So being able to have, this is a place that's safe, that has good medicine, and you can go to easily and get whatever amount you need. They didn't have small caps on it. It wasn't just a gram a day, or some of these places, medical is very restricted. When you go recreational, you allow access to people's own dosage and them being able to regulate themselves rather than put restrictions on them. And people learn to use the different terpenes to regulate themselves and understand what it does. They're able to try different strains because they don't have a restriction of like, I can only get this one and I have to make the right choice. They can get a few different ones and see how they feel and be able to be like, oh, this one works best with my body chemistry. And really regulate their medicine usage on their own better than their doctor, and have that able to communicate. So Colorado's always been a staple for
cannabis tourism in my life. And Cali, we all know Cali culture, and that's like been the hot spot for weed since the gold rush, before our time. Like that happened long before us. Everybody's been talking about California since my dad was in Pennsylvania, and he talked about California weed. You know, we used to regularly drive across this country for, I don't know, tourism, I guess. So, you know, to be able to have this today is just so beautiful, and bring it home to Miami and make it a safe space here.
Oh yeah, shout out to Miami. I always tell everyone to come out to Miami for weed, and they're like, "What? It's not even rec there." Like, and I'm like, "Go to Turp Basil. Go." Like, I try to bring all my Mass people out, but I have to say, Massachusetts is a center for tourism. People don't realize the culture there is so strong because the craft market has been able to take off like amazingly because of recreational legalization. There's so many craft growers, cultivators. The culture's amazing. They give in Massachusetts, which is one thing that I'll always appreciate. Like, you get 20 pre-rolls and like all kinds of crazy stuff when you go to Nikan out there. Of course, Maine has always been, you know, very accommodating to cannabis tourists as well. So really all of New England is my home where I grew up, but I'll be snowbirding my whole life. I'll be coming down, and we'll be 80 years old. I'll be coming down to Turp Basil. So
So we're definitely running a little bit low on time, but yeah, man, I always say get out there and boost your local weed economy, or get out there and boost the international weed economy. We just got back from Barcelona not too long ago. We traveled out to Spain to throw an event in the heart of BCN right in March. We went out there for Spanibus, which is one of the largest cannabis festivals in the whole entire world. This was the last year they would ever be in Barcelona, so it was a bittersweet, momentous occasion for a lot of people. Pretty soon we're going to be traveling to Germany. The market there is absolutely booming, and majority of the people that we actually met in Spain were all from Germany, UK, Colombia, in these new emerging markets like Thailand, coming out there to try to build their brands. So get out there and travel and get to these places, because you're going to thank yourself later when you did it. I have a lot of friends who went to Amsterdam in the late 90s who are like, you know, they feel like OGs now that they get to experience that, because it's not the same. So get out there and do it now while the getting's good and you have the chance and it's still something new and fresh, you know? We're kind of running out of time, so I want to make sure I gave each and every one of you guys a chance to just plug your brand, plug what you do, where you're from, what you got going on for the rest of the year.
Thank you. Yeah, so as I said, we have CanX, which will take place in October, 24th and 25th in Kingston this year. It's a great opportunity to come and meet some of the local players, understand how the local industry is evolving in Jamaica. And we've recently just, which I'm excited about in terms of from a commercial perspective, we've just launched something called the Ganja Store, which is, you alluded to, delivery. So that's what we do in Jamaica now. We have a delivery platform that does both mushrooms and ganja straight to people's hotels, their offices, their homes, etc. And that comes from a dispensary. So it's all legal. And you know, the other thing about legal versus illegal, of course, because this is an emotional debate with some of the legacy growers in Jamaica who have been able to avail themselves of the license regime. But I think a lot of it comes down to quality, and a lot of it comes down to safety for the consumer. And that's what you're really seeing. You're seeing people come to some of the resorts and they'd love to have some ganja in Jamaica, but you know, they're not going to get it from the guy on the street. You know, that whole sort of romantic world that we lived in some time back has evolved, because people are now, hey, I can make extra money if I cut this, lace it with this, and do whatever. And so the consumer is just, it's not about being bougie, it's about being safe. And so, you know, I'm happy about this platform. I'm also happy to sort of say that it is coming from a quality perspective. And I think that's something we all have to be mindful of, is that the consumer has shifted. And it's not a bad thing, but it's also important that we, as industry guardians, if you will, who want to see the industry thrive and people participate, understand that and meet them where that consumer is, and help those folks who may be operating with an older mindset, help them to understand that it's not about leaving them behind, particularly in Jamaica. It's about understanding that this is the direction you have to go in, because that's just how the market has shifted. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on quality being a huge factor, and I agree with that. I have a little bit of a different view on that, just because here in the States, just what I'll speak on based on what I know, the more regulated you get, the lower the quality tends to be. So I know a lot of legacy growers, especially from the West Coast, that aren't necessarily licensed, but have been doing it for 20, 30 years and produce better quality product than any licensed dispensary or brand that you can find. So one thing we really celebrate at Turp Basil is bringing in, we've created basically a global hub for the culture, whether you're on the licensed side or the legacy side. So I'm proud to say, actually, last year in December, we had brands come down to Miami from 14 different states and 5 different countries. And we've created this environment where you really don't find it anywhere else. Like I said, brands in the legacy market, brands in the licensed market, brands from all over the world under one roof for 3 nights. And we curate the list of the group of brands very specifically to make sure that we're only bringing in brands with the highest quality products, because we want to educate consumers. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't know anything about cannabis quality, and they only think what they've seen is the best it is. So until someone else pulls out a bag of some shit that you've never seen, you think what you're smoking is fire, and in reality it's probably regular, because there's so many grades and levels to this plant. And it just keeps getting better and more potent. And I mean, that's debatable too, because sometimes I hear the argument that cannabis, the high doesn't last as long as it used to. It might be stronger now, but the high fades quicker. So, that's a different debate. But, anyways, I was just going to say, for us, what we've got coming up the rest of the year, we at Certified Baked, we have a Hall of Flowers party that we do in Santa Rosa. It's a pre-party called Barn to be Wild in September. And we have Turp Basil in December. We do other events in Colombia that I'll let Steve here touch on. He's been going down there for years. And you can find us at certifiedbake.com and at Turp Basil on Instagram, TERPBASEL.
Yeah, you'll find me at those events. Check out our site. But I'll be traveling, so you'll also find us at all the other events that we can support. Definitely going to be going down to Colombia a lot to plan events down there. Definitely want to make a trip to Jamaica. Jamaica keeps coming up, and I'm definitely going to make a trip down to Jamaica. And any of these events, I'd love to chop it up with any of you.
Hi. We have a lot of stuff coming up the rest of the year. You can follow us on Canna Bliss Babes, CANNABLISSBABES, or cannablissbabes.com, and kind of see all of the things that we have coming up, all of the different events that we partner with. We do a lot of the different conventions, so if you're trying to get your brand into some of these conventions, I am the liaison for a lot of these. We also can talk about your brand and find what events would fit best, and take your brand internationally, do your content, have ambassadors. We do it all, so whatever you need, we're here for you.
That's amazing. I could use some of your services for sure. You can find me on Instagram, 7_Bailey. So, or highendeventscompany.com. And we do events in Massachusetts if anybody ever finds themselves up north. Also, I find myself to be a liaison, like you're saying, international liaison.
All right, guys, that concludes Passported to the Left, the Rise of Cannabis Tourism. Big ups, my panelists. I feel like everybody who attended this event this weekend, who presented, who spoke, really made cannabis history here in Miami. Thank you guys for what you do. Keep continuing on. Let's go blaze something. Happy Cannadelic, y'all. Take care.